looking at a statistic today that, honestly, it feels almost dystopian.
Hmm.
In the UK and the US, over half of the calories people consume, we're talking 57% in the UK, even a bit more in the US, are from ultra-processed foods.
And that's the thing, isn't it? It's not junk food like we used to think of it.
Right, not just a bag of crisps or a candy bar here and there.
No, we're talking about things that have become the default, the staples. Supermarket bread, healthy yogurts, pasta sauces, breakfast cereal.
Ones that look like food.
Exactly. They're sold as food, but chemically, inside our bodies, they function in a completely different way.
And that really gets to the core of the article we're diving into today by Olivier Sanchez for Nutrunity. The argument is that we've just fundamentally misunderstood what we're eating.
We have.
We look at a label, we see wheat, we see sugar, and we think, okay, I know what that is. But the source argues we have to stop looking at nutrients like carbs or fats and start looking at processing.
Exactly. This is the big shift. From what you might call the nutrient mindset to the Novi mindset. And frankly, it requires a complete rewiring of how you walk through a grocery store.
Okay, let's talk about Novia, because I think most people have heard this term floating around, but it gets really muddled.
It does.
People think processed just means, cooked or chopped. I mean, if I bake bread at home, I've processed the flour, so where's the line? I don't want to feel guilty about chopping a carrot.
And you shouldn't. The line is the difference between a kitchen and a factory. A lab, really.
Okay.
To get this, we have to look at the 4 groups that Sanchez highlights.
Yeah.
Group 1 is your raw material. An apple, a steak, an egg. Simple.
Unprocessed. Got it.
Group 2 are the culinary ingredients you use to cook them. So oil, butter, sugar, salt.
Things from your pantry.
Right. And then group 3 is processed foods. This is where you combine group 1 and 2. So you take flour, water, yeast, salt, you make bread. You take milk and salt, you make cheese.
So that's still okay. You recognize the ingredients. The food still has its integrity.
You said the magic word. The food matrix is still there. But it's group 4. That's where things get murky.
The ultra-processed category.
This is where the food is essentially deconstructed and then rebuilt.
Okay.
It's an industrial formulation. The source gives a great mental lab test you can do.
Oh, yeah.
Are the ingredients on the package things you could find in your own pantry?
I actually did this morning before we started. I looked at a healthy granola bar. It had soy protein isolate, maltodextrin, and high fructose corn syrup.
And you can't buy a bag of isolate at the corner store.
No, you can't.
And that's not just a sourcing issue, it's a biological one. When you eat an isolated protein or a synthesized fat, your body just doesn't recognize it in the same way. It's not like a nut or a piece of meat.
And the source says these formulations are hyperpalatable. They're designed to bypass your satiety signals.
Yes.
Wait, hold on. Let's unpack satiety signals. You're saying the food is designed to break the mechanism that tells me I'm full?
In effect, yes. Look, in a whole food, the fiber and the structure, that matrix we talked about,
Right.
requires chewing. It takes time to digest. The energy is released slowly.
Right.
And ultra-processed food is often, well, it's basically pre-digested during manufacturing. It's soft, it melts in your mouth, it hits your bloodstream like a shot of sugar. You don't stop eating because your body never gets the signal that it's had enough.
So when I eat a whole bag of those cheese puffs, it's not a lack of willpower.
It's engineering.
Yeah.
It's not a moral failure. The source lists additives like emulsifiers and flavor enhancers that are there for one reason, to make the product addictive. They want hyperpalatability.
That is genuinely terrifying. But let's look at who's eating this stuff. Because if it's over half the diet, it feels like it must be everyone. But the data shows some specific groups are hit harder.
It does. The source is really clear that young people and lower-income families are the biggest consumers. That's true in both the UK and the US.
And in the US specifically.
In the US, it's non-Hispanic, white, and black adolescents who have the highest intake.
Now, usually when we see stats like that, the immediate assumption is, okay, it's an economic issue.
Junk food is cheap, fresh food is expensive.
Exactly.
And that is true to an extent. But the article points out a really crucial and I think disturbing nuance. Even when you control for income, so when you compare wealthy families to lower income families, these patterns persist.
Wait, so rich kids are eating just as much of this stuff as poor kids?
In many cases, yes. While affordability is a huge factor for some, the fact that it cuts across income levels suggests something else is going on.
Culture, marketing.
Deep-rooted cultural and marketing forces. You've got affluent teenagers eating energy bars and processed snacks because it's the cultural norm. The marketing has successfully branded these industrial products as fuel for a busy, high-achieving lifestyle.
It's the convenience culture. We're all just too busy to chew, apparently.
And too confused to choose. The stats from the UK are very telling. 84% of Britons have heard the term ultra-processed food.
Okay, so awareness is high.
But 65% say they find them too hard to avoid. And more than half admit they don't actually know what counts as one.
Which brings us right back to that no VA confusion.
Yeah.
You're in the aisle, you see a label that says high protein, you think you're making a good choice.
And that confusion is precisely where the industry thrives. Which leads us to the healthy cookie.
I found this section just fascinatingly cynical. As the public gets wise to, say, sugar, the manufacturers don't switch to whole foods, they just reformulate.
It's a classic bait and switch. The industry argues, well, our products can be part of a balanced diet. We've cut the sugar by 10%, or we added some vitamins back in.
But the source quotes Professor Corinna Hawkes from City University London, and she is brutal about this.
She is.
I have the quote right here. She says, "That's a classic reformulation. They are baked with whole grain and vegetable oils. I think they add absolutely no value to the diet, whatever."
No value, whatever. It's such a strong indictment. Her argument is that a reformulated UPF is still a UPF. You can add fiber to a cookie, but you haven't restored the food structure. You're still just eating a soft, hyperpalatable block of energy.
But what about government guides? The Eat Well guide in the UK, the dietary guidelines in the US? Why aren't they flagging this?
Because they are, in a sense, fighting the last war. The source argues these guidelines are outdated. They're focused on nutrients, salt, sugar, fat. They can't tell the difference between a salty piece of artisan cheese and a salty extruded corn snack.
So to the guidelines, salt is just salt.
Exactly. The salt content might be the same on paper, but the effect on your body, the inflammation, the impact on your microbiome is totally different.
The guidelines are blind to the processing method.
And in the U.S., the situation is even more compromised. The source notes the U.S. lacks any federal regulations that specifically target UPFs. And it points to a big structural problem.
Which is?
U.S. government bodies often have food industry representatives involved at every single level of policy design.
It's the fox guarding the hen house.
Pretty much. It makes it very, very hard to design policies that prioritize public health over profit when the people making the profit are in the room where the rules are written.
Okay, so the biology is rigged, the policy is captured, and the marketing is working. That is a pretty grim picture.
It is.
But the source material also gives us a counterexample, a kind of resistance movement, you could say, and it's coming from the Mediterranean.
Yes, let's talk about the French paradox.
I feel like we've been hearing about this for 20 years. You know, why do the French eat all that butter and not get heart disease? And the answer was always
Red wine.
red wine.
There was Veratrol in the wine, reducing inflammation. That was the easy answer. But the source suggests the real paradox today isn't about what they eat, but how they eat.
Okay.
It's about a kind of cultural protectionism. While the UK and US have basically surrendered to the convenience culture, France and Portugal have held the line against UPFs.
Protectionism. That's an interesting word. We usually use that for economics, but you mean it in a culinary sense.
I do. In France, the gastronomic meal is literally a UNESCO-listed piece of world heritage. There's a deep-seated cultural belief that food is a shared ritual, not just fuel.
And you contrast that with the US or the UK, where the source says the family meal has disintegrated. We eat in the car, at our desks,
Uh,
while scrolling on our phones.
and that behavior drives the food choice, doesn't it? If you're eating in a car, you need ultra-processed food. You need something that's shelf-stable, not messy, and that you can just inhale in 5 minutes.
You can't eat a salad while driving.
You cannot eat a bone-in fish or a complex salad while driving. So the dinner table isn't just a piece of furniture.
It's a defense technology.
In a way, yes. By sitting down, by prioritizing the social act of eating, you naturally slow down. You tend to serve real foods that need a knife and fork. The source argues this cultural insistence on the event of eating is what's kept UPF consumption lower in those countries.
And it's not just about table manners. The source says the French actively distrust the cocktail effect of all these additives.
They do. They view synthetic ingredients with a deep suspicion. French MPs are actually pushing to drastically cut the number of allowed food additives from over 300 down to around 48.
Wow.
It reflects a mindset that food should be natural. If you need a chemistry degree to understand the label, they don't want it.
And there's a policy element too, right? France isn't just relying on tradition.
No, they're legislating.
Yeah.
In 2017, France introduced the Nutri-Score system. It's a clear label right on the front of the pack that rates nutritional quality. They've also banned junk food ads aimed at children.
That seems like such a no-brainer, banning ads for kids.
It does, but it's a huge fight against the industry. But again, the policy only works because it aligns with the national identity. Food is a pillar of national pride in these places. If you destroy the food, you're destroying a part of what it means to be French or Portuguese.
And there's an economic difference too. The source notes that farmers' markets are still accessible and affordable in these regions.
Right. In so many food deserts in the US or UK, the UPF is the only cheap option. In Portugal, you can still get cheap, fresh sardines and potatoes. The supply chain actually supports the culture.
But let's be realistic. We can't all just move to Lisbon. And most of us don't have 2 hours for a UNESCO-level dinner every night.
Oh.
If we're stuck in this environment, how do we hack it? What does the source suggest for the average person?
It offers a few, maybe grim but practical heuristics. We can't change the national infrastructure overnight, but we can adopt the mindset. The first is the kitchen rule.
This is the label reading trick.
It's simple. If you see a long list of ingredients that you would not use at home, things like hydrolyzed soy protein, modified starch, invert sugar, just put it back on the shelf.
That sounds easy, but if you actually do that in a typical supermarket, you're eliminating like 80% of the snack aisle.
You are, and that is the point. The article identifies snacks as the main Trojan horse for UPS. The recommendation is to essentially stop snacking on packaged goods entirely. If you need a snack, eat a piece of fruit, eat a handful of nuts.
It's a hard reset. But what about things that seem like real food? The source mentioned soups and sauces.
This is the snack trap, extending into meals. You think you're being healthy buying a vegetable soup, but if it's shelf-stable for 3 years, check the label. It almost certainly has thickeners, flavor enhancers, all sorts of things to make up for the lack of fresh ingredients.
So cooking from scratch is the only real way out.
According to the source, yes. Even simple cooking, just combining Group 1 and Group 2 foods, is the single most effective way to opt out of the entire UPF system.
There was one more takeaway that I think is crucial, and it's about the next generation.
Yes, the data shows kids are the highest consumers. And this is where that palatability issue becomes really dangerous. If a child's palate is trained from age 2 on these chemically perfected hypersweet, hypersalty flavors, a piece of broccoli just doesn't stand a chance. It tastes like nothing to them.
We're basically gaslighting their taste buds.
Exactly. So the act of cooking real food, even simple food, is a way of recalibrating that baseline. We have to teach the palate what real food is supposed to taste like, or the industrial version will always win.
It really brings us back to that idea of the silent takeover. We're not just outsourcing our cooking, We're outsourcing our biology to food scientists in a lab.
And the French example shows us that the only way to resist a takeover is to have a strong identity. If you value the ritual of the meal, the industrial food starts to lose its power.
And that's the thought I want to leave you with. The French paradox isn't really about wine or butter, it's about respect. Respect for the ingredients and respect for the time it takes to eat them together. Maybe the healthiest thing you can do today isn't counting calories, but just clearing off the kitchen table and eating a meal without a screen in front of you.
I think that's a great place to start.
Thanks for diving in with us. We'll catch you on the next one.